Hi and welcome back to Bike Speed. So this week we're going to service this Orro Gold road bike. It's on Ultegra group set, so we're going to clean all this down and change the chain and do a few things along the way. And we are actually going to save this rider's next ride, and we'll show you why along the way. So you can see here 0.75 over 6 inches is sort of the typical stretch when you would change the chain. If it gets this 1% over that, at this point this chain being stretched out is going to start to wear the cassette and chain rings on this bike. So we did sort of check those. I think this customer caught this just in the nick of time really, because they hadn't started to thin out or show signs of wear on the cassette. So I think you should be okay with a new chain on this one. So you can see here the oil that's on the bike, it was well oiled, which is natural, it's good practice. But what happens is that oil picks up debris off the road and actually turns more into a paste, which you can see just here how that's very pasty and very thick. So we're going to clean these components down. So we're going to get everything off the bike and give this a proper degrease and clean down so that we can get that oily paste off, ready for this lovely new chain to go back on the bike and the bike to continue its mileage. And that's what we're sort of doing with the service, and that's why this customer really picked the perfect time to get this bike serviced. There was one, the chain had fully stretched out. If he'd left that much longer he would have been wearing out other components on the bike. So it was a good time because one, he got his chain changed just in time. We spotted 2 or 3 other little problems along the way that, you know, would have only got worse, and so he really did get the timing of his service spot on. When we're servicing a bike, we're looking at each component, we're looking to see how dirty it is, whether it needs cleaning, what would be the best route to getting that component serviced correctly and extending its life, which is basically what a service is about, making the bike run smoothly and extending the life of the components that are on it. So we're stripping everything down. Everything's now going to go, that we sort of decided with this particular service, to in-depth clean. All those components now are going to go into the Ultrasonic cleaner. We won't put these jockey wheels in because these Ultegra jockey wheels on this particular generation have actual ball bearing, bearing races in the jockey wheels themselves, so we don't want to flush that oil out. So we'll just clean the derailleur itself, which is what we're doing. So we clean down all the parts. We're going to lubricate all those parts up, get them, spot on, ready to go back on the bike, and that's what we're trying to achieve in one of our services. So I would like to say thank you to the rider of this bike for lending this bike to film for YouTube. At Bike Speeds, we do run quite dynamic. We're generally getting stuff, a lot of work out the same day, and most of the rest of it out either the day after, within sort of 48 hours at least. Most of our work goes out of the shop, so we run very dynamic. But the bikes that we film for the YouTube, they can sometimes take a little, day or 2 longer, and so we, generally we agree that the bike is going to be filmed with the customer before we film it. Those customers are good enough to lend us the bikes for an extended time period so that we can film them to bring to you on YouTube. So, when you're dropping your comments, just bear in mind these belong to people, and, they love their bikes. So we don't want to be criticising a rider for the way they look after their bike. They're bringing it into us to get service, which is the absolute best thing they can do and is a good thing, so we're bringing you some entertainment and they're bringing us the bike. So thank you very much, one, to this rider for lending us this bike, and to every other rider who's lent us a bike for a video. We very, very much appreciate it. You can see now we're lubricating the parts that have come out of the degreaser and have been cleaned up. They've all been washed down. Now we're just lubricating the pivot points, the threads, the rotating parts, whatever it be. We're using the correct greases and oils. We use 3 or 4 different greases and oils along the way. Even these little bolt things on the chain set, the mount with threads, I lubricate all those so that I can take that chain set apart again next time a little bit easier. These are very prone to corroding together and sometimes quite hard to get the big ring off of the pedal arm itself, so we do that. Now I noticed on this one as well that the headset bearing had a little bit of wear in it. It was a little bit stiff on the bottom race, and again that's something that when you're getting your bike serviced, we're checking all the bearings. In general, I can kind of feel the amount of mileage a bike has done by the wear and things that are on the bike. You sort of get a sixth sense of the journey, the life journey of a bike and its components as to where they're at. So with this one, you can see the sort of the brown oils, and that's a telltale sign of the bearing weeping out its oils and lubricants that are in it from new, where worn bearings are. So we clean out all the cups, clean everything down before putting new bearing races in. With this one, we upgraded these bearing races. They're slightly better quality than the races that were originally in this bike. Even this cap, the token logo on that cap there, you can see I've lined that up with the forks each side rather than being slightly twisted. It's just little details like that that you as a rider may not notice, but me as a mechanic, I do these little sort of details and subtle little things that when you get back on that bike, you'll be like, oh, this is really nice, you know, and you'll fall in love with your bike again, not really knowing quite what I may have done to it along the way, but it's those little details that I sort of pride myself in and just get a bike right. Now, with this bike, because of the routine service that this was, I could have got away with just washing this bike down and putting it back together. But this frame had this lovely finish of gloss black with the logos and that raw carbon weave showing through that was lacquered over. So it was a high gloss bike. And once I polished it with a super resin polish, it really popped out. I was just did it for the crack really. It was just nice to get this bike polished up and really looking nice again. So that's what we did. We went right through the bike. And again, the super resin polish, it means that new parts, you know, new debris is not going to stick to that frame quite so easily in wet weather. So it's a good practice anyway. Now this again is an example of why a tactile wash down and clean of a bike is such a good thing. I've gone through the hub, I've cleaned all the hub down. I check the spokes with my fingers just to make sure they're all okay. You get a sixth sense of spoke tensions and whether they're right or wrong, check the rims and so on. And what I noticed with this bike on the hub itself was that the preloader right here on the bearing was loose. Now, the bearing itself felt absolutely fine and perfect, so this hadn't had a detrimental effect at this stage, but if this bike had carried on being ridden, that preloader wouldn't have had the right load on the bearing, and that bearing would have prematurely worn, and before you knew it, he'd have had play in his wheel just because that preloader was loose. So again, through me servicing the bike, I've checked that, I've felt it, I've found it, I've sorted it out, and it prolongs the life of the components that are on the bike. And that's what you're trying to achieve by servicing a bike right through, is that nothing's going to come off and fall off, nothing's going to wear prematurely because it wasn't set up correctly, and so on and so forth. So that's what we're trying to achieve with bikes. So you can see we're just getting everything back together now. Everything will go on. We put everything on sort of pinch tight, I suppose you would describe it as initially. So we'll pinch up the bolts, check everything through, get everything adjusted, everything's spot on. This front derailleur needed quite a little bit of extra setting up compared with how it was when the bike came in. The low screw, high screw, the mount, there's like a little thread that holds the mount off from the frame, that was incorrect. So we just, you know, little bits of setting up before we then go through the bike and torque it all up for its final tighten up and everything. Like I say, we just pinch everything up, make sure everything's right. In the instance of this, the cable end had come off when we took the cable out to get the derailleur off. We never actually replaced any of the cables on this bike. They were all okay, everything was operating as it should when it came in. Just needed that little bit of TLC to really make the bike perfect. So we're actually very close to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 subscribers. So we're looking forward to the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 subscriber, hopefully within the next week or so. So do like and subscribe. Do drop a comment in the comments. You know, the comments help the algorithms of YouTube, help videos get out there if they see that they're popular. So tell us what bike you're riding. This Orro bike is quite unusual in the UK. You don't see many of these. You know, I've seen probably only a handful of these over the time. So tell us what bike you're riding, maybe what group set you're riding, why you're riding that group set. We love all the comments, we enjoy reading them, and we do interact and reply to as many as we can. And you can see now, just before I go through the bike with the torque wrench, new handlebar tape was the order of the day. The top edge of this, where the palm sits, had really worn away on this bike. And again, that's one of those things where I can get a sixth sense of the mileage a bike has done and where it's at mechanically and wear for the lifetime of a bike. And you know, I can really sort of sense those things just by work I'm doing. And I keep records of all the jobs I've done, so I also know in the future when I did the last time I did a particular job. So we're just working through now with the torque wrench, as you can see. So I try and torque up every nut and bolt that I can physically see or get to on a bike, torque those up to manufacturer specifications. That way I know that nothing's over tightened so it's going to strip out threads, or under tightened so it's going to come off when the bike's being used. So I know that when this bike leaves the shop, it's absolutely spot on. I give a service sheet with all the bikes, with all the torque wrench settings that I've used. And finally we pump up the tyres. And this again, why wouldn't you get a bike service? This here is actually a little bit of debris that's gone below the surface of the tyre. Every time that tyre is ridden round on the road, that's going to push through, and that is this rider's next puncture, and I'm saving it. There's a flint come out of that tyre. That is guaranteed to have been a puncture on the next ride. Gone, no puncture, and that was all through getting the bike serviced. And most customers would never even know I'd done that. There's another little one there, look. much smaller, but still that flicked away. Again, 2 flints, 2 punctures, guaranteed to happen in the future. We've solved that. We've solved the back bearing, cleaned everything up. This bike is ready, torqued up nicely. So yeah, it's great. So thanks for watching. Do pop over to Instagram and like us over there as well. And we'll see you again next week. Thanks again.